I'd like to call to order the Town of Chincoteague Ordinance Committee meeting, May 13th, 2021. We all stand for the invocation followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Heavenly Father, we just thank you for this day, Lord. We thank you for this magnificent community that we live in, Lord. We thank you for its residents, Lord. We thank you for its visitors, Lord. We just ask a special blessing upon this community and all the decisions that we make, Lord. May they be proper decisions in accordance with your will and your direction, Lord. Be with our town officials, Lord. Just watch over them, keep them strong, keep them enduring through all the times that we go through, Lord. We have good times, we have bad times, Lord, but best of all, we have perseverance, Lord. Lord, that's everything that we do, everything we say, be done in accordance with your will. First, in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, do we have any public comment?
No one signed up, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a motion to accept the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
The first and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, our item listed now as item 6 on the revised agenda. Discussion of marijuana ordinance. And Mr. Town Manager, if you could.
All right, Mr. Chairman, Chief Fisher and myself have been studying and studying and studying. And we probably know more than we ever thought we would about this subject. We've obtained, I've obtained some legal advice from 2 or 3 different places. We've read the ordinance, we've looked at all the guidance we can find, and basically, the town is free to adopt ordinances within, of course, the scope of the state law that has been published. And here on the screen right now, we have local ordinance authority. Basically, our ordinances will have to mirror the state's ordinances as far as use and that sort of thing. We are given by state authority the right to have a order of referendum for retail sales within our jurisdiction. The regulations which, or the part of the act which addresses referendums says that the referendum must be held between July 1 of 2022 and December 31st of 2022. You notice that straddles the November general election. Okay. We have to go to court and ask the court to, of course, the judge to order the referendum. Has to be published 3 weeks, once a week for 3 weeks prior to the referendum. And what's interesting to me is that, and I will try to pull it up here for you, is the question has already, that will be asked on any referendum, was spelled out in the act itself. And I'm trying to, here it is.
It's on the back page 4.
It's on the screen right now.
All right.
The question is, shall the operation of retail marijuana stores be prohibited in, and fill in the blank, town of Chincoteague? I filled it in red. You notice that requires a negative answer to allow it and a positive answer to prohibit it. I don't know if that was by design or if that's just the way it turned out, but if you vote yes, you're actually voting for the prohibition of retail sales. If you vote no, you would actually be voting for the allowance of retail sales,
Right.
which is, to me, somewhat confusing.
Yeah, I had to read it a couple times myself.
Yeah. So the other thing that runs along with that is that if the referendum, if the results of the referendum are yes, we want to prohibit sales, retail sales within our jurisdiction, then no sooner than 4 years later from the date of the referendum, Another referendum may, doesn't necessarily, it says may, it doesn't say has to, but it says may be ordered to cancel again. And it says 4 years from the previous referendum. It doesn't say from the original referendum. And Chief Fisher and I read this very carefully. So it appears that from the wording here, every 4 years at the council's discretion, you could have another referendum if the answer was, yes, we want to prohibit sales. However, if you vote no, we don't want to prohibit sales, the question's over, you can never ask it again on the referendum. So once you've allowed retail sales, that's it, you're done. If you disallow retail sales every 4 years from the date of that referendum, you may order another referendum on the subject. And it appears that you can keep going forever from the wording. Again, this is so new and came upon us so quickly, I don't see it having been vetted by a lot of attorneys thus far. We were fortunate enough, our supervisor, Supervisor Tarr, shared with me very recently, and it was in your emails here this afternoon, a summary done by the county attorney, who's read the entire act and come up with a summary of the most pertinent points. It's a very good summary, but there are a few things that she didn't appear to comment on, and some questions that we still have. And the referendum thing, whether you can do it every 4 years in perpetuity or if it's just once, is still a question in my mind. Another question that I have, we can prohibit the use, or the council, I say, can prohibit the use of marijuana in public spaces. What is less clear, and what Chief Fisher talked to an attorney today, I did as well, is the definition of public space. Everyone seems to agree that the public space is certainly sidewalks and streets, public buildings, publicly owned property, and every definition I've read includes even private spaces if the public has access to them, such as a golf course or a restaurant, things like that. That's also considered public for the purposes of this law. What's less clear, and if you had read some of the early ordinances that I gave you from some of the western states that have had this law for quite a while, some of those states have prohibited the use of marijuana or marijuana products even if they are in view of a public space. So if you were standing in your front yard and someone is standing in the public right-of-way and sees you using marijuana, in some of those states it would be prohibited. Now, whether they actually enforce that, I don't know, but it is on the books in some of those states where I gave you the sample ordinance. The ordinance I see from the state of Virginia, or the act that I see from the state of Virginia, I don't see where it actually addresses that. From the research that Chief Fisher and I have done, it appears that, and the lawyers that we've talked to, it appears that in order to clarify that, we're going to have to get some case law behind us where it's actually taken to court and the judge rules on it and establishes a precedent. So I have been cautioned by the attorneys I've talked to stay completely within the bounds of the act itself, so that there's no question you're within the bounds of what the act allows you to rule on. And that seems to be fairly clear. You can rule on retail sales, there's no question about it. You can adopt an ordinance that prohibits the use of marijuana in any form in public spaces. Those two things aren't in question. You can do that. But as far as going so far to say that redefining public spaces as in view, private property in view of a public space, that the opinions I've gotten seem to think that's going a little too far until there's some case law established. There's also a provision in the ordinance which states that and I can't pull it up right now, I can't remember which page it's on, Robbie may, but states that if an incorporated town that's located within a county, if the county acts on this ordinance, it also covers the incorporated town within the limits of the county. So if the county would act on this, the way I read this again, and it's sort of new, so we don't have any opinions on it, but the way I read this, if the county of Accomack were to act on this ordinance, we have to abide by the action that they took. So I'm assuming if they go to referendum, that the results of their referendum would also apply here. If we act alone and the county doesn't, then what we say goes within the town of Chincoteague. That's the way I read it. Again, not a lawyer. Other than that, we'll try to answer any questions you may have. Robbie, did you have something else that we haven't hit?
No, basically, just following up, from what you said, and concerning, the use in public. Well, and one of the things I think I spoke with Mr. Toller today about, this is a law.
Mm-hmm.
The town doesn't have to adopt any ordinances that's already in the law.
Mhm.
One of the one law that we were talking about today is 4.1-1108, which is on up top. I've got 159. I had a 283 on that page. All the way down to the bottom, 4.1-1108, and that first in subsection A, it says no person shall consume marijuana or a marijuana product or offer marijuana or a marijuana product to another, whether accepted or not, at or in any public space. So I called the Commonwealth Attorney's office today and just, got a question on that. And, they were basically said, well, rule of thumb most of the time is a public space is if you can see, if the public can see. And they kind of referred me to like the drunken public law.
Mm-hmm.
We can't do anything if you're drunk in your house, but if you're outside and you're under the influence and you're acting up, then even on your property, we can still arrest you for that. And that's what, and until, Mr. Talk said, until some case law is behind this, who knows how the Virginia Supreme Court is going to look at this. That's what I think. I think it's going to take somebody, which if you read below in B, any person who violates this section is subject to a civil penalty of no more than $25 for a first offense.
Mhm.
And it's a civil penalty for a second offense, but the judge can order substance abuse on the second offense. And then I think it goes up to
Class 4.
Class 4, on a third or subsequent offense. And I've also, if you notice, I think on the last page that I gave y'all, I think it had the classes. Yeah, Class 4 misdemeanors of a fine of not more than $250. So.
I think, if I may, are you done, Robbie?
What's that?
Are you done?
Yes.
I don't
yeah.
want to cut you off.
Sure.
I've been thinking about this quite a bit since it was brought up before. I do believe a lot of people already know my opinion about it. It's out there. Been out there forever. People are using it. It's now going to be legal come July 1st. I think the only issue that we're going to have as a town is a dispensary. Now, with that being said, I'm not a pot smoker. I'm not going to go to a dispensary. I'm not a surfer either, so I'm not going to Atlantic Shoals. But, I don't want us to get into the situation of, and maybe the law covers this, of being discriminatory against a valid business either. I like the idea of it going to a referendum and let the people out there decide what they want to see here on Chincoteague. You and I talked about it. I'm going to borrow your line. I'd much rather see a dispensary than to see it sold in Shorestop or, one of the surf shops. And I'm assuming they may have the very legal right to do that. I don't know. If they get a license for it, they might be able to do it. Just like, they can serve or sell beer and wine. So, I've done some research on the effects of it. It's a drug. That's just the way it is. Just like alcohol is a drug. Chris Bott, as a pharmacist, has more lethal drugs behind that counter than marijuana. And you can go get a script for them all day long. Again, I'm not advocating for it. I'm just saying that's the way it is. I personally would like to see us send this to the people and let them see what they want to do with the dispensary. There's no way possible for every resident on Shingatig to come in this door here and tell us how they feel. There's no way for them to email us, every one of them, tell us how they feel. But come election time, they tell us how they feel. And that's the way I feel about it. It's going to be the law come July 1st. It's already in the books about being in public. How much you can have, how much you can't have, what you can grow, what you can't grow. To me, this is no different than alcohol. And, never thought I'd see it in my lifetime. But, back in my great-grandmother's days, she probably never thought there'd be a ABC store somewhere, It's the times. It's just the way it is. And, we were brought up that, this is bad and that's bad and this is bad. And you know what? Some of it might be bad. Some of it might be good for some people. Alcohol is the same way. Smoking's the same way. I don't feel like that we should be the moral police on this. People, have their own responsibility to themselves, to their families, to their, to their body. If they decide to partake in it, who am I to say? Or who are we to say? Again, I'm not necessarily advocating for it, but I want to do what the law says, because all of us that are sitting up here were sworn in to uphold the Constitution of the United States and the laws of Virginia, and come July 1st, it's going to be the law. So we just need to figure out how we're going to deal with it. That's my 2 cents worth on that. Thank you.
I just had a couple questions. So, just for clarity, so with what is being enacted in law by the state of Virginia, there will not be any action necessary from the town of Shingatig in the way of an ordinance as far as not for public consumption, or not for consumption in public areas.
That's my understanding. In fact, as I said, we've been cautioned, or Robbie and I have been cautioned to any ordinances which we adopt that mirror the state ordinances, which we are perfectly free to do. Make sure we stay well within the bounds of the state law, so that we don't become a test case for the Supreme Court.
Oh, absolutely, agree. But it does appear that under 4.1-1108 that it does cover those circumstances.
Yeah.
Okay.
That
First sentence.
Yeah. So if we did adopt an ordinance, we could literally adopt the same exact language and make it an ordinance if we so desired, but it may not be necessary.
Yeah, you could certainly adopt the same language. In fact, you could adopt any language you desired, as long as it was keeps itself within the bounds of what's allowed by the state.
And I'll say this too, and I'm not 100% sure on this. I know we adopt every year, we adopt the
Traffic laws.
Traffic laws and the DUI codes in order to get the fine money back. That may be something here also. I don't know for sure. So if we did, adopt this as written like that, then we may be able to get the fine money back, for it. Where if it's just a state law, I can research that more to find out.
And it seems like they've mirrored this a lot like alcohol.
Yeah, if you actually read, like Mike said, this is 283 pages, this law is, and the first
123 pages.
123, yeah, is actually that, mirroring it to the Alcohol Control Board. The Alcohol Control Board and this Cannabis Control Board.
Yeah.
Pretty much, not one and the same, they're going to be two separate boards, but they're right there together.
And I think the first 123 pages don't even mention marijuana. They mention ABC, or alcoholic beverages.
Sure.
Yeah.
It blows my mind that somebody in Richmond, or a few people in Richmond, put out 283 pages on smoking pot.
One last question. So let's say we find out in 2 weeks that the town would have to adopt an ordinance to keep it from being consumed in public spaces. or, traded or whatever it may be, how quickly could we get an ordinance on the books to prevent that if necessary?
I have talked to VML, their expert at the time, and he told me that VML is working on some sample ordinances. None of them were ready, because I asked that specific question, and he said, we're not ready for that yet. And this, I mean, you know the history here. It was supposedly, we had a few years to prepare for this, and in the last legislative session, they pushed it to July 1 this year. So everybody's kind of playing catch up a little bit, I feel, but I mean, I don't see why we couldn't get something on the books in 30 days if we're writing something straightforward that can be easily interpreted and the lawyer can say, yes, that'll work.
Because if there's any doubt, I mean, my only concern is this: we are a tourism community, we're a family community. I'm not looking to infringe on anybody's legal rights, just like Denise said, but we do have a, we are established in a certain way, and we have to protect that. I mean, we have to protect our tourism industry, we have to protect our citizens, both for and, use, for those that use marijuana and for those that don't. And what I don't want to see happen is any chance of July 4th weekend this comes effective July 1st, and all of a sudden you have a problem, in public area streets or whatever it is. So I'm hoping that the state law covers all this and we don't have to do anything. And like Denise said, put it to a referendum as far as the dispensaries are concerned and let the public decide. I mean, that's the way it should be. And, as long as we're sure that this covers us and offers us the protection there, then I don't see where we really have, as the Ordinance Committee, any further action on this right now.
I don't either. I echo that sentiment when we first, discussed it. That was one of the things I said. I don't want somebody walking downtown smoking a joint and there's a 6-year-old walking with her parents behind them. I don't want to, see that.
No different than not wanting to see them with a fifth of liquor.
No.
Same thing.
And I get it. Somebody's out there is going to say, well, what about cigarettes? They're just as bad. They're this, and well, yeah, they might be, and they probably are. But we're not talking about cigarettes. We're talking about marijuana, and that's what's on the, on the table right now. And
I think part of this, biggest part of this law is geared towards that, because if you read the part about the keeping a full marijuana plant. Can't be out in the open, can't be where anybody's there, it has to be, inside your house or in a structure, that the public can't see.
So basically, nothing has changed regarding consumption in public places of marijuana. Nothing has changed in conjunction with open availability of marijuana in a vehicle.
Right.
Is that correct? And what is the penalty going to be if someone is suspected or seen in a vehicle consumption?
I
consuming that?
believe it's, and
Well, the law, and I just recently read this afternoon. The law, it's meant to, as Councilman McComb said, it's meant to mirror the open container law, and it specifically applies to vehicles that way. It even goes so far as to say that it's not allowed in the passenger compartment, and then defines passenger compartment in each type of vehicle. So
So you're saying a locked,
there's a lot of
compartment
detail.
or whatever it has to.
Councilman said, it's just 4.1 right above 1108 that we were just discussing, right above that 4.1, 1107 actually deals with the vehicles. And if you look on subsection B, it's unlawful for any person to use or consume marijuana or marijuana products while driving a motor vehicle upon a public highway of the Commonwealth, or while being a passenger in a motor vehicle being driven upon a public highway.
which is just like being charged with a DUI,
No.
correct? Or no?
No, open
No?
container.
Open container.
This is the
Okay,
same-
all right,
this
I'm
is
sorry, I see
basically
open
the same
container,
as an
yeah.
open container of alcohol.
Right. Do you have anything in place? I know you got breathalyzers for alcohol. Is there anything in place for?
That's what my understanding is now, that the state of Virginia is trying to rush some type. There is no test, to my knowledge. There
What
is
test?
no test for, under the influence level of marijuana. Right now, we've got tests whether you use marijuana or no, you haven't.
Right. And I just read this section, and what it does
Well, there's
say.
a blood test, isn't it, available?
There's a blood test, but then again, they can't tell from the blood test how long it's been in your system and whether you were under the influence. So the guidance that it gives law enforcement officers in here is that odor cannot be considered, right? If you smell it, you can't consider that. However, if the person appears under the influence through the different things that police officers have been trained on to recognize as someone under the influence, then they can proceed with a DUI, or driving under the influence. But it can't be the smell of it. And if they find an open container in the passenger compartment, it is considered just like an open container of alcohol. They consider you as under the influence if they find the open container. Is that right,
Not
Rob?
under the influence, no.
Well, what is it? They consider it.
Just
it's-
open
Basically,
container.
It's an open container.
Yeah.
But it says something about considering you've used it, or you've been partaking, I guess.
Yeah.
If they find the open container, it's assumed you've been
Right.
using it.
Yeah, I think it actually said that it's assumed that you're under the influence. I believe
This
that's
is
how it's
the
written.
appearance, conduct, speech, and other physical characteristics of such person, excluding odor,
Yeah.
is consistent with the consumption of marijuana products. Such persons may be prosecuted. And it goes on to say,
Right. And that's basically,
yeah.
that's like with anything.
To me,
It's,
again.
You know, if we stop somebody and they don't have odor of alcohol on them, but they fail all the field sobriety tests, we can still arrest them for driving under the influence. Because, you know, we have driving under the influence of alcohol and then driving under the influence of drugs.
Yeah.
So we can arrest them. The only thing that I'm saying is right now, Virginia does have like, you know, different drugs and you know, I'm not even 100% sure about the levels. But see, you're talking, one of the things that that the governor and all is trying to do now is to have they're actually officers that are drug ID experts that can give different field sobriety tests that will actually tell the officer what drugs or what type of, like those amphetamines, methamphetamine, it'll tell them what they're under. And then, of course, you can require a blood test. Blood test will provide, you know, that yes, they were, you know, had methamphetamines, or they had, you know, whatever's in their system, marijuana, you know, whatever. And then it's up to a judge basically to decide
But there again, if somebody smoked marijuana 5 days ago, it's gonna be in their system.
it could be in their system.
Mhm.
Yes. Yes, could still be in their system. They're not under the influence
Right.
of it.
Right.
So that's where that's my understanding at least, is where they're trying to come up with some test now that will prove what level of influence they're under,
Yeah.
with marijuana.
I could be wrong. I don't think you're gonna see much of a difference in what you're dealing with right now.
No.
I really don't.
Okay, do we have any other comments?
No, sir, I don't.
Any other comments? So I do want to reiterate what Councilman Bill said regarding, make sure we're covered, July 1st. If we see any need to adopt an ordinance to mirror what's written here, then I think we should go ahead with that. Okay. Okay, we'll move on. And the next item of discussion is discussion of downtown speed restrictions. And are you going to be talking on that, or is Chief Fisher?
The Chief Fisher's gonna lead it. I can jump in. We were able to find the records from the last time this was discussed a few years ago, and the requirements that are going to be the requirements that we're going to have to deal with in order to accomplish this, if it's the pleasure of the council and the pleasure of the committee. Chief Fisher, did you want to start with that, or?
Sure, I
I'll
can. I was able, thankfully, Harvey, I believe the last time this was brought up was under the Public Safety Committee in 2016. And Ms. Bowden, you were on that also. And basically what happened then, it looked like, was there was discussion to lower the speed limit from, I guess, Smith Street to Jester Street. And I think Mr. Spurlock was able to get a hold of a traffic engineer, I believe, from up in Salisbury. And at the time, he advised him if we had a speed trailer, and could do like a speed study, it would save the town a lot of money if he could get that data, for that. And at the time, we just had a small speed trailer that didn't collect data. We do have that now. My thing is, I spoke with Chris Isdell from VDOT yesterday, and he told me that, for VDOT's recommendations, we have to have a traffic study performed by a traffic engineer that is licensed in the state of Virginia to conduct speed studies. And then the study should be forwarded to VDOT, just basically as a courtesy, because, we're under that compact with them, where they give us the money for the roads. We can pretty much do, and that's what he said, they can pretty much do whatever they want to. But what I'm getting at, as far as the speed study and so forth, I have seen in court where attorneys have gotten people off on speeding in the New Church area and in the Wattsville area because they've asked the officer to write a ticket for a speed study where a traffic engineer study where it was done, and of course they couldn't produce them. So if we're going to look for the police department to enforce it, then we need to go by the way that we're going to have to do it. Now, if that, if the guy that Harvey had up in Salisbury is licensed as VDOT saying in Virginia to do it, and we can get it all done. And of course, once we get the speed study done, I believe, I was thinking about that today, I believe basically if we get it through the courts the first time, then the judge will pretty much take judicial notice of, yes, the speed study was done, and from then on after it wouldn't be a
Why would it even be a question if the speed limit on this island is 25 miles an hour? And if you go faster than that, why is it even a question?
That's not.
Well, I mean, but
No,
why
see-
would the judge ask for a speed study?
I'm talking about where speed has,
If
like
we
in New
lowered it.
Church, it's
Uh-huh.
55, but then it goes down.
Right.
Anytime you reduce speed,
Okay,
the Virginia code says you have to have a speed study done
okay,
by a traffic engineer that's
Right.
licensed in the state of Virginia to do speed studies in order to lower
all right,
speed
so,
limits. We
so-
don't have anything to worry about now because of the other 25.
right.
You know,
So if, I guess what I'm saying is, how can somebody get off from the judge if, that wasn't good use of words, but how can somebody get off on the charge if the speed limit is posted, whether it's 15 or 45 or 25?
I think what they're saying is it was posted without the proper paperwork, without the proper study being done to justify the posting of a lower
Gotcha.
speed limit.
Okay.
So
That
therefore,
makes sense.
the state's original posting would override it, I think is what they're trying to say.
I'm reading back through the minutes from 3 or 4 years ago when we talked about this. They wanted $3,900 to do that study.
right.
I'm sure it's more than that now. I'm like Jay, and we've all sat at Don's and watched people go through it. I just don't think that it's an overwhelmingly amount of people.
My recommendation, what I would recommend
and I think what-
to you all is let me put the speed trailer down there in July, for the month of July, and see what kind of speed we get.
I think that's a good idea.
This,
We do have a speed trailer now that does collect the data.
Mhm.
So I can put it down there, and I think July is a perfect month. That's just a month that it is.
Yeah, I noticed that you have the delineators down there. I think that's that's a
That's
good
gonna be
thing
a
as
big-
well.
That's a
It
help.
slows people up as well, but it's so many, how many total crossings do we have in town
Well,
now?
that was gonna be my next comment. The one thing that I see, cause I have almost hit people,
Oh,
not because I'm speeding,
No,
but because you've got a crosswalk like this, you're going Main Street, you got a crosswalk, and then there's a car that's parked right here. You don't see them people
You
coming
don't.
at you. You know,
and
that,
see, it's my understanding when they redid the downtown area, the reason they did it like that and narrowed the road was because it is a natural buffer to cause people to slow down.
right,
And I think that has happened, because if you look, I think what we're gonna find out is most people that are not from here will probably slow down as they come in. But the people that's been here, and, you know, we've been here,
Yeah,
they're the ones
they're
that's
used to
gonna-
it.
Gonna
Yeah.
keep going.
yeah.
At
But
25 miles an hour.
I do, and I knew that Harvey, you know, had put out the things in the middle of the road about
Post,
watching,
yeah.
and they get run over and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I do, and I know, you know, we've spent a lot of money downtown with making it look pretty and all this stuff, and I don't wanna do anything to, you know, make it look gaudy, for lack of a better word, but the crosswalks need some attention as far as
drawing attention.
drawing attention, there
Yeah.
you go.
Yeah, I agree.
Because they're,
Well, basically, they're bricks,
yeah,
middle of the road.
yeah. And people use them, there's a lot of people that don't use them too.
Yeah.
But like I said, you know, you might have a car, you know, where the old pharmacy used to be, or the old, bakery, you know, you might have a car right there, and then somebody's coming out from behind that car, and you don't see them until you're right there. So,
If I could add, fortunately, we have this new speed trailer which keeps the data. It'll keep the speed of every single car that goes through there up to, I don't know how many it does, Robbie, but it's quite a few. And we can download the data. And that is helpful because we didn't have that capability the last time this was discussed. My understanding is a certified traffic engineer is a licensed professional engineer who is competent in traffic engineering, and all of them are taught traffic engineering in school. So it's not as hard to find one as you might expect. And the other thing is where this trailer, there's Harvey and I and Robbie have been discussing where we have this trailer which records speed now. We may be able to, instead of them sending an engineer down here to count cars and monitor speeds, to produce this data for them if they inspect the area where it's been placed and all that. We just send them the data and they do the study from that, because times and speeds will be recorded automatically by the trailer. So we may be able to save some money on that $3,900 that was done before, is my point. So that may not be, it may not be quite that expensive, we're hoping.
And I'm in
So
agreement
whatever
with
official could look at that information and make, maybe, like you said, maybe it'd be less expensive to perform that study or
Well,
whatever.
They would actually, and if the engineer's prudent, he's going to see the equipment, where it's placed, what it's monitoring, you know, that sort of thing. He's going to input on that, and that's fine. But that's one visit, and by the time he gets here and says, okay, here's where I want it set up, here's where I want it on at this time of day, here's the data I need from it and all that, he goes back to the office and we'll give him the data at the end of the study. That if that's possible, and I don't know that it is, but something's got to record it, and since we already have the equipment and the know-how to do it, it may just be a matter of we'll send you the data after you approve the setup, and you can work from there. And we may be able to get it a little less expensive.
Yeah. I mentioned to you a while back that I saw some information in the VML regarding the drop in the speed limit. Did that documentation, did that allow, in your idea, any relaxation on some type of engineer coming in and doing a study and such?
Yes, and I think it's along the lines of what we're talking about here. But correct me if I'm wrong, Robbie, but the minimum speed the state allows is 25? Minimum posted speed
residential areas.
in a residential area.
Residential areas, the speed limit can be posted 25.
So-
It's expected to be.
It's expected to be, and I think from remembering from my driver's ed education, I think if it's in a residential area or any area you're in, you look at the area you're in, if it's not posted, the state has assumed speeds that you travel in those areas.
Right.
So in absence of any posting, you're assumed to drive those speeds in those areas, is the way I was taught. But in any event, we can lower it if the proper paperwork is done, if the proper study is done. It's at the discretion of the governing body at that point, which should be the council.
Okay. I guess I'm getting back to, we're really concerned about pedestrians, and especially those pedestrians that are coming to our island, who it's just a given that you always heed, to the pedestrian crossing. That some visitors just aren't even looking, they just automatically think it's their right, and it is their right to cross there. And that's what scares me. I've just seen so many incidents where, we need reminders as well.
Yes.
The things that we're not accustomed to. But,
Right. And one other thing I will add, when I spoke with Mr. Isdale, was that he did say, when he talked to his person over in Suffolk, that there's only 2 places in the Suffolk district that he knows of where the speed limit is 15. He said there's quite a few where it's 20. But he said it's only 2 places in the whole Suffolk district where it is 15. So it's not something that is a normal thing to happen, is the way I took it. It's not. I guess it can be special circumstances, and this may be, one of those special circumstances. And again, not to beat a dead horse here, but if we're going to enforce it, I want to make sure that the study that we get done is the study that's going to be upheld in the courts. Because I know, a lot of times you can just hire anybody to do, a study for you, but that's why I wanted to make sure, when I talked with VDOT, he said it has to be a traffic engineer that is licensed to do a traffic study in Virginia. So
I think that your speed sign will go a long way.
Well, that's kind of why I put it up there.
Yeah.
This
Well,
past
I mean, when you do it
week,
to,
see how things, are going with that too.
well, I mean, that, right now it's not recording speed, is it?
Oh, yes. It's all-
Okay, all right. So have you pulled any data from that?
No, I have not. Usually I like to leave it up for a week or so and then pull it and see what we've got, so.
is it something you can do remotely?
Yeah.
Okay.
Have to take a thumb drive up there and plug it in.
That would be, it's been up there for now since our last council meeting, right?
Since
close.
last week, I think you put it up there last week, one day last week.
Maybe by our workshop meeting, you could have a few numbers for
Oh, yes.
us? Okay. I also think too, cause look, I don't know what speed limit is, I'll admit that. But I think when you're sitting real close to, like you're sitting at Don's and they're going by, they're probably not as fast as you think they're going. I
Right.
think
If you
the closer
notice-
you are to it, I think the faster it looks
If you
sometimes.
notice, that's what Mayor Leonard said in number 4 on
Yeah.
the paper, discussing speed limit. Mayor Leonard's been seeing people going through town appearing much faster than the actual are, but doesn't believe they're over 25. And that does happen a lot.
It does.
I mean, Chincoteague streets are small, and.
When you see a motorhome coming through there, it
Yeah.
always appears fast,
Yeah.
especially if they're sitting right
They're
next to the
probably
window.
going 26, 27,
Yeah.
but it sounds like they're going 50.
Mm-hmm.
And it looks like, they're going 50 through there, because they're throwing up dust and everything else too, so, and we do get that a lot, people will call and say, hey, got people going by my house 50, 60 miles an hour. And very rarely, I know we don't catch everybody, but it's rare that we catch somebody 50 or 60 miles an hour, and even like, when we have, since we've had the speed trailer, when we put it out, at different locations, we'll get some in the high 30s or low 40s, but we don't have any yet, that's been in the 50, 60 miles an hour, so. It does, but, like I said, our streets are so small, and people are used to seeing somebody going 25, You know, 10 miles an hour is a big difference. When you're used to seeing somebody going 25, and now all of a sudden they're going 35. That's a big difference to your eyeballs. You know, so.
Okay. Anybody else have any comments? Anybody have any proposals, where we go from here on that?
I'll be anxious to see what his data shows.
Okay.
Then I think I hate to fork out 3,900, and like I said, I think it'd probably be more now. You know, but you know, back then what we said, just throw a bunch of ducks there in the middle of the road and they'll slow down. But you
Some
know,
people
See many
would.
ducks no more.
yeah,
Foxes, I think,
Fox has
are
got
different.
them.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, moving on. Item 8, I believe is on the new agenda. Discussion of modification to section 46-3 to add cigarette butts.
Mr. Chairman, this is a section of the current town code, chapter 46, section 46.3, that basically covers, it's the closest thing we have to a litter ordinance. It's very short: deposits on sidewalk, streets, alleys, and lanes. No person shall throw upon any sidewalk, street, lane, alley, or any paper rags, old shoes, tin cans, bottles, fruit or vegetable peelings, glass, decayed fruit, dead animals, or any other refuse or waste. The suggestion has been made to include cigarette butts specifically in that, to define them basically as litter upon the sidewalks or streets.
Yeah, I'm going to speak to that a little bit. We used to, when I was in the Royalton Club, we used to pick up on Beach Road. And it was just kind of amazing the amount of cigarette butts, just people just flick out. I get, you know, today you don't find too many new vehicles with the ashtray in there. So what do you do with a cigarette butt and such? But still, you know, it's a concern. It's a concern. People have come up to me and said, you know, what are we going to do with, you know, with how our island is just being deteriorated, he kind of put it, regarding cigarette butts and such. So I guess you would enforce it just like you do anything else here. Vegetable peelings, fruit peelings, I'm not sure when that came about. But,
How about it? I throw out an apple core all the time because I know that the animals will eat it. You know.
Yeah.
Oh, they also have dead animals and.
Yeah. When's the last time you wrote a ticket for littering?
Can't remember. Cannot remember.
I mean, I get it. Cigarette butts are bad for the environment. They get washed into waterways, things like that. Drainage, animals, you know, eating them and stuff like that. I don't see any reason why not to put it in there. I just don't know how you gonna force it, you know. If we had a code officer for this town, he'd be working 500 hours a week. You know what I mean? You just can't get everybody. You can't. I mean, you can't do it. But I've got no issues adding cigarette butts to it.
I think when you look at everything else on here, it's it would definitely classify in the same realm of some of this stuff. But.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of things. It says any other refuse or waste.
Yeah.
I think that, I mean, well, there could be 500 things you could put on there that you shouldn't throw out.
I think the suggestion to include that is so that it removes the interpretation of the officer or whoever is enforcing this that cigarette butts are refuse or waste. You're now defining it specifically in the ordinance. So.
Well, would you just, and again, I'm not a smoker of cigarettes, but what about cigars? Does anybody ever throw out the end of them, or do you smoke them down till you burn your fingers?
Yeah.
I mean, should that be included in there too?
I don't recall seeing a lot of cigar butts going around. Myself personally.
I think it's the filter itself that's the issue, even though it's
Yeah,
a filter, it's still,
probably.
I mean, you know, the animals and other things.
Could you just make it tobacco product butts, in that way, covers it all?
Tobacco product waste,
Okay.
That covers it.
rather than just specifying cigarette, butts,
Yeah.
tobacco product waste.
Yeah, I mean, that
Do we
takes care of
have,
the,
yeah,
you know, their packaging and such as
Right,
well.
everything.
yeah, most places, I see a lot of cigarette packs,
Mm-hmm.
empty
I
ones.
see that too.
Sometimes you find money on
Hmm.
them. See them out a lot, but to me, that's just like any other refuse or waste. But, I'm gonna go back to, you know, one, all right, it's on the books, so if you see it, obviously you can enforce it. A lot of businesses have trash cans that have places that you can put cigarette butts and all that stuff, so that's good. I mean, I would love to encourage more of that. So, yeah, tobacco products. I don't have any problems with that. Do y'all have any
Yeah.
problems with that? I don't
Either
either.
way.
Good to go. Okay, and I think you have a good idea there. Maybe we could look into some, I mean, do you have anything out town that, you know, somebody with a cigarette, they could dispose of it?
I don't
out
think any of
town?
our trash cans have
Not that I can
lids
recall.
on there. You know, for, I know when I smoked, if I did, I'd put it right on the top of the metal part, and make sure it was like good, and then throw it in the trash can.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you know, you just brought up a good thing. I mean, another reason too is, you know, people throwing their cigarette butts out is, you know, starting
Starting
brush fires and
yeah.
stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's hazardous in a lot of ways.
Oh, yeah. So that may be something that we could look at too, you know, I'm not sure if those trash cans, I would imagine, maybe, I don't know, Harvey could look into it, but I know a lot of them just have like a little can on the top that's built right down into the top of the trash can. Don't know what those cans out there can have something like that, just replace the top.
That would be cool. It would be encouraging to people to do that.
Oh, yeah.
Mhm.
You know?
Yeah, it would. It would rather than put it out in the road or
Mhm.
Yeah.
sidewalk.
Yeah.
I think most people would use something, you know, if they had it, rather than, you know, and I know there's times when I was smoking, like I said, if I didn't have anything, I'd knock the fire off and then just put it in my pocket and put it back in the trash can, you know. Not everybody's like that, so.
Does this need to be in a motion?
Yes, ma'am.
I think so.
Well, I make a motion that we include tobacco waste products into this ordinance.
Okay, we got a motion that we include tobacco waste products and have a second on that.
And I guess I could maybe follow it up with including packaging.
I would say
Or
that
is-
covers it.
does that cover it?
Tobacco waste
Yeah.
products, I would think,
Okay,
would cover everything,
Yeah.
packaging and everything.
okay.
All right, so we have a first, I mean, we have a motion, we have a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we'll pass that on. And we'll just wait to hear on the other as far as, you know, receptacle. Moving on. I think next we're looking at, discussion of modification of section 10-59 animals.
Yes, sir. This is a clarification. First, there's two issues here. The first one is section 1056, and chapter 10 is on animals. Section 1056 is a very short, the total ordinance is not more than a few words. Number one is have a hog pen. Number two is keep one or more hogs. So it would be based on this section, which is a total of 7 or 8 words here. You are not allowed to have hogs on the island of Chincoteague anywhere within the corporate limits. It occurred to us that maybe, just to clarify this, it should say, if it's the intention of the council to say hogs, pigs, or any other swine of the related family of swine, to make sure that it's clear that or not, if that's what the council's intention is. It may help in the enforcement of this section.
So this would exclude, like, because I know folks have them, like domesticated type pigs, like
Well,
potbelly pigs.
potbelly pig, I mean, if that's in the, and I'm not a biologist,
Me either.
didn't really cotton to that side of things, of science, but if that species, if they are part of swine, the swine species, then I guess it would include potbelly pigs as well. You certainly could complicate this a little bit and put domesticated varieties which are kept indoors shall be exempt, or something similar to that statement. But I think we all understand why this was put in here, because of the problems. I mean, problems that can happen with your neighbors and things like that. So, as I said, this is just to clarify so that there's no question of the council's intention of what how this ordinance should read.
Okay, any discussion?
I don't have any issues with that. However, I get what Bill is saying. There are some pets that are kept indoors. They are domesticated. I don't know exactly. I don't know exactly how you would want to word that.
Unless it just, he's as simple as that, excluding domesticated
Indoor.
indoor animals.
And-
Or
And how often would they have to be indoors and,
Well,
the reason why I brought it up is because at one time, my parents had one,
Mm-hmm.
and it was like a dog.
Mm-hmm.
It-
Sure.
Well, it barked, because it heard the dog bark, so it barked.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
So,
the question of indoor now becomes indoors in what? Does that include an enclosure you build inside the pen in your backyard, or does that include your domicile?
right. Because he did have a place out, or she had a place outside where she could go and run and, you know.
mhm.
I know one of the things we're having trouble with right now is I've had 2 phone calls from neighbors at a certain area with hog pens, the smell,
I get it.
you know, how close it is to the property line, things like that. I kind of feel like if it was a domesticated pet pot-bellied pig that went outside to do its business and then ran into its little enclosure, you probably wouldn't have, you know, any issues. But this is almost like a, for lack of a better way to put it, it's almost like a farm.
Yeah, livestock.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and we're gonna have to do something, because I think it's gonna get nasty.
I get it. I wouldn't want
No.
Well, I think we have an ordinance in effect regarding, waste removal and such.
Yes, there
Is
is
that
an
correct?
ordinance for waste. It is located in the nuisance ordinance. And this obviously is not in the nuisance ordinance because it goes to the source. They're not giving you, if this were not here and it was only located in the nuisance ordinance, then you could technically have 100 hogs on your property as long as the waste and smell was kept at bay and the neighbors didn't complain, I assume. But I think at the time, evidently the council thought at the time, and I think this was 1977, it says here, when the code was installed. At the time, the council felt strongly enough that they said, you know, we're just going to disallow them because of the problems.
It's not so much of the animal itself, it's their byproduct
Right.
Sure.
that people have, you know, the issue with.
Mhm.
I don't see how you could probably get around it any other way except can't have it.
Yeah, I'm with you. It'd be very hard to enforce the allowance of what may be considered as a domestic pig.
So my question is to you, if there's somebody on this island now that has a domesticated potbelly pig,
Keep them inside.
yeah, I was gonna say, who's gonna tell them they gotta get rid of it?
Well, again, I think you could add a section in here that says,
Yeah, I-
exceptions shall be made for domesticated animals that spend a certain percentage of their time in the domicile of the owner.
Even if it's a majority.
Yeah, majority of the time, that's 51% of the time, yeah.
Yeah, I'd be agreeable with that.
And that would also, like number 1 up there says it's unlawful to have a hog pen. So that, you got a pig in the house, goes outside, does whatever it gotta do, and comes back in, right?
Yep.
You don't have a hog pen,
And a lot of them are trained to litter boxes and all.
right?
So I
Hogs
guess-
and cigarette butts.
I guess that would allow you to walk them as well. I guess you would leash them up and
Yeah, they work
as long
hard.
as they clean up afterwards. Okay,
I don't know how to word that.
Would you like me to write something and bring it back before the committee, or?
Yeah, that'd be good.
that would be a good idea, yeah.
While we're on animals,
It's in here.
oh, you got something? You
Oh,
got-
yes.
Okay.
The
All right,
next
cool.
part of this, if you look down at section 1059, under enclosures, we've had a concern that domesticated fowl, and that several categories of birds and fowl that are domesticated. It could be domesticated geese, it could be chickens, you know, guinea hens, whatever you have. Domesticated fowl running free is an issue. This section of the code already addresses certain animals running free. Section 1059, enclosures, it shall be unlawful for any person to keep horses, ponies, mules, donkeys, cattle, sheep, goats, or similar animals in the town unless they are safely and securely enclosed by a fence and provided they are properly housed. Simply, if this was a problem that you wanted to address, you could simply add domesticated fowl to the list of animals and problem solved. That lets out wild geese, wild ducks, seagulls, any fowl that's not domesticated.
What do you do
Natural,
then?
basically.
What do you do then? Because in this particular situation, you've got the owner saying they're mine, but they're wild.
If they're feeding them,
Oh,
they're yours.
yeah.
What I'd say.
Mhm. Huh?
I-
If they're feeding them, they're yours.
And I think that's an excellent point right there. If you're feeding them, then you're caring for the animal. If you're caring for the animal belongs to you.
The elephant in the room here is there's guinea birds running wild on Ridge Road. They are owned by somebody. Somebody brought them there. Neighbors are complaining heavily about they're getting on top of my car. They're in the road. They're getting hit. You know, they're scratching in my garden. They're this, that, and the other. And the owner is saying, I can't keep them in. They're wild animals. But, you know, they're the ones that brought them there. And, you know, I get it. I'm an animal lover. I get that. But I also get, I don't want my car tore up or my yard and everything else tore up either. And I certainly don't want to see them get run over all over Ridge Road. It's been a big time issue.
I agree with that.
If I could add, we have had in the past instances of people who had chickens and roosters that ran free, called them theirs, but they ran free and they turned them loose in the neighborhood, and to the detriment of all the neighbors who didn't want to hear the rooster go off at 4:30 a.m. and things like that, didn't want to have them pecking up their gardens and things like that. So there have been issues, and I will grant you it's not the issue of a hurricane bearing down on you. It doesn't have the urgency of that, but it is a nuisance. It does fall under the category, I think, of nuisance. So this is not an isolated incident. It has, we have had complaints before.
I think what Mike said is a good suggestion as far as just adding that description.
Mhm. Any type of fowl should be securely enclosed. I agree with that. Does that need to be a motion?
Yes, please.
Domesticated.
Fowl include chicken?
Domesticated fowl, again, not a biologist, but fowl to me is anything with feathers that flies or attempts to fly, and
Yeah. And there's people that do raise chickens, and guess what? Every one of them I've seen, they're enclosed.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know?
you want them, 'cause I mean, things get them.
that's right. They're
So-
food for something.
Yeah. Well, I make a motion that we add to section 10-59 about enclosures to include any kind of fowl.
Domesticated fowl.
Domesticated fowl.
Well, I don't know if you should say domesticated because, well, you know, I don't feed them, but I brought them here. They're running wild.
What about ducks and mallards?
Well, true.
Domesticated,
You know.
but people do have them.
Yeah,
Well,
Okay.
if people haven't
Rabbits.
clipped their wings, I would say they're domesticated.
yeah,
People,
Yeah.
back in the 80s, everybody
Yeah.
had a duck pond,
yeah.
you know?
What about free range?
Well, I don't see how you could include or have anything that's free range. It's either the problem with the guinea birds is that they're either being a nuisance, they're being a nuisance to other people's property.
They are free range.
That's the problem.
Okay. You're going to preserve that motion?
I don't want to see anybody have to get rid of their animals. However, this is a nuisance. And I know that the town office has gotten many complaints, right, Mark? I know my phone has rung off the hook a lot about it and messages. I just don't, I think they need to be enclosed or not have them. If you can't contain your animals on your property,
Right. I agree with that.
you know? I mean, we don't, you know, Mark, you know, our cowboys, their horses aren't running all over Shingatig. I stand by what I say. I think they need to be enclosed or you just don't have them if they can't be enclosed safely.
Okay. Okay, we got a motion on the floor that under section 1059 enclosures, that domesticated fowl be included in that.
Are we including the word domesticated?
I think you have to.
I think, yeah, you probably have to.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it, I'm sorry.
Okay. Got a second on that? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So directed. Okay, I think that almost wrapped us up. I was running out of numbers there. Anyway, do we have any comments from any of our committee members?
Yeah, I just want to clarify something. Earlier when we were talking about the marijuana ordinances, you know, I said, you know, that Chris at the pharmacy probably sells more, I don't know exactly how I had it, more, you know, lethal drugs than marijuana. I wasn't picking on Chris. I could, you know, I could have said Apple Drug in Salisbury. I mean, I'm just saying there's a whole lot of, you know, prescription drugs out there that are very dangerous. Robbie knows about the opioid situation here in this country, here on this shore. It's sad. It's sad. No matter what becomes of this, I just hope that people will remain responsible and not only to themselves but to everybody else in their community. it's coming July 1st. It's something we got to deal with, and I've got the utmost confidence that we will deal with it. Robbie, I mean, I know you guys will, you know, be on it just like they need to be with anything else. We get new laws every July 1st, it seems like, that we got to deal with. So that's all I have to say, Mr. Chairman.
I just want to thank Robbie and Mike for getting us as much information they did on this so quickly, because there's a lot of unknowns about this, so, thank you both, great job on giving us the details that we need. And, I'll just reiterate what I said before about this, is just, you know, I think all of our larger concern is, you know, the continuity of the community. You know, we are a family destination, and there's a lot of impressionable kids out there, so, just, you know, doing everything that we can do to continue, what we already have, I think is the most important, without infringing on anybody's rights.
I would just like to comment again that I'd just like to thank County Manager Mike and Chief Fisher on coming up with the information, providing us with that information. I guess one of my main concerns is, you know, our kids in our community, how this can affect our kids. We know that basically the same carcinogens in cigarettes or in marijuana. It's science on that, and so we just have to keep praying for that. That we'll have a sense of peace about this, a sense of understanding on this, and that that our visitors and our citizens will realize, you know, what we're all about. We are indeed a family, a family-oriented community. We want to stay that way, and we just want to continue to promote the well-being, the health, the safety, the security of this island. That's our major goal, and I think we'll make it with God's help and prayer. I think we'll make that. So that being said, do I have a motion to close?
Make a motion to adjourn.
A motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you very much.